G'day everyone, welcome to Inside Rugby with Mark. I'm a Kiwi rugby fan living here in beautiful Cancun in Mexico, and today I'm supporting the local team with my jersey. So welcome to the channel. If you are a regular viewer of my channel, welcome back. It's great to have you here. And if you're a first timer, welcome. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button because we're building a fantastic global rugby community right here on Inside Rugby. I want you to all participate by dropping your comments, leaving your thoughts about these videos and all the things that we talk about on this channel. Now in today's video I'm going to be reviewing the game between Scotland and England in the weekend in round 3 of this year's Six Nations competition, and what a game it was. Lots to talk about, and in this video I'm going to do things a little bit different. Okay, so let's get into it, and as I say, I'm going to do things a little bit different today. What I've decided to do to review this game is to have a look at the good, the bad and the ugly from this particular game between Scotland and England played at Murrayfield in the weekend. And what a fantastic place Murrayfield is, isn't it? And the singing of the Flower of Scotland was one of the good things that came out of this game for me. It was an absolutely emotional experience, as there were a number of anthem renditions across the weekend of the Six Nations rugby. But let's get on to the game itself, what happened, and let's start off by looking at some of the good things that I thought happened in this game in the weekend. And I'm going to start off with that man Duhan van der Merwe, and what a game he had, scoring 3 tries. First hat-trick scoring try for Scotland in the Six Nations competition. A brilliant performance, and he does it all as well without getting a hair out of place. So a fantastic performance by him. And second up on my list was Finn Russell, and he's ably assisting van der Merwe score all these tries at the moment by some wonderful tactical kicking and some pretty slick passing. But I thought Finn Russell and Duhan van der Merwe both had brilliant games for Scotland in the weekend. And obviously when those two players are at their peak, Scotland are going pretty well, aren't they, in the competition? And we've also seen what happens on the reverse side. What I like about van der Merwe is he goes and gets interested in looking for the ball throughout the game. He's just not sitting out there on the wing waiting for the ball to come. And quite often you'll see him, if you watch the coverage of these games, he'll go in there, he's in the rucks looking for the ball, or he's standing very close to the rucks, giving himself that opportunity to create a darting run from dummy half. And that's what all good wingers do. So I really respect his level of play and intensity throughout the games as well. Now the next thing up on my list of good things that came out of this game was another one for Scotland, and it's Jack Dempsey. I thought Jack Dempsey had a brilliant game. He was probably one of the best Scottish forwards on the ground in the weekend, particularly in defence. He came up with some big turnovers and was instrumental in keeping Scotland in this game, I felt, at different points of the game. So a fantastic game by Jack Dempsey, one of the best number 8s going around. Let me know what you think in the comments if you agree with me on that one, in particular on Jack Dempsey's performance in the weekend. Now next up on my list of things that were good in this game was George Martin's performance for England. He came on for about 34 minutes in the game, replacing Ethan Roots, who was a little bit out of sorts again this weekend, I thought. And George Martin put in a stellar performance in the English forwards, and I think he would probably have to be putting his hand up for a starting role next time out for England, because I thought he had a really cameo performance. So good on you, George Martin. You were one of the shining lights for England. Now another thing on the good list for this weekend's game was the performance of the English winger that came on after 65 minutes, Faye Wabasso, and what a try he scored. Absolutely brilliant. Found the gap, timed his run perfectly and went over, and I'm going to talk more about him in particular in this video, so stay tuned for that. But a great performance by him coming on when he did, and he got the ball a couple of times and made himself look very dangerous indeed. Got to be some question marks around that, and as I say, we're going to be talking about that a little bit more in this video. Now the next thing that stuck out for me in this game that was a good thing was the performance by the Scottish 10, 12 and 13 combination. I think Finn Russell, Simone Tupolotto and Hugh Jones have that really great combination going on for Scotland. Unfortunately, Tupolotto went off injured later in the game, but we saw before he did go off that there were some really good things going on, both in attack and from defence. So We know that these guys have been playing a lot together. They've got that good cohesive combination going, and that was something that was really enjoyable to watch in this game for me. Now the next good thing that I've got on this list was for England, and it considers the number of turnovers they won in the game. They won 8 turnovers in this game, and whilst that was a good thing, I'm going to talk about the flip side of that when we get to some of the bad and some of the ugly things that England did during this game. But they did win 8 turnovers, so there was some good work going on by particularly Ben Earl in the breakdown situation. So the next good thing that came out of the game was the major overall tackle count for a number of players. 1 Englishman, 2 Scotchmen were leading the tackle count this weekend. Ben Earl with 15, along with Rory Darge and Scott Cummings. So 15 tackles apiece for those 3 players. And if you watched the game, you would have noticed that they were in there at critical times, all of them making decisive tackles in the game. So good work rate by the 3 players. Now, some of these things that I have on my list today are positives on one side of the scale and they're negatives on another side of the scale, and I'll explain those as I go through the video. So a good thing here was that territory won in this game was England 56%, and possession they had 54%. So in terms of actual possession throughout the game, England had enough to win this game. There was no doubt about it, and we're going to talk about what they did with that possession as well as the territory. They spent quite a bit of time in Scotland's territory, but they didn't necessarily always come away with the points. So I'm going to talk about that when we get to the bad and the ugly of this game. But a good work rate from England. They were able to win both the territory and the possession part of this game. So their problem is not getting the ball enough periods of time or spending enough time in the opposition's half. It's what they actually do with the ball when they get it, and we're going to talk about that soon. Now, in terms of talking about that possession, when it comes to England, they were able to win 100% of their scrums in this game, and they also won 93% of their line-out wins. So indicating again that when England are having the opportunity to get the ball, they're actually able to win the ball, and their forwards are doing a good job. It's all about what they're doing that ball and their execution, and we're going to get into that later on in the video. So now the last thing on my list of good things that came out of this game that I noticed was Scotland's tackle count. 150 tackles they made throughout this game, a lot more than what England made, and it just showed that the Scottish defence was very, very good at this game, keeping England out. So whilst we've got lots to talk about with the way that England went about attacking in this game, the Scottish defence was very good by putting in the number of tackles and having the defensive line up in England's face, causing them a lot of problems. And a lot of the mistakes that England made were because of the rush defence from Scotland. So I've put that down as a very good thing for Scotland. So there's a list of good things that I got from this particular game in reviewing it. Let me know if I've missed anything that stood out for you in this game that you thought was good for either for Scotland or for England, and make sure you put that in the comments. Now let's head on into the list of bad things that I noticed in this game, and again, let's see whether you agree with these or whether you've got your own ones that you noticed throughout the game. First thing at the top of my list when it comes to the bad things from this game was England's selection choices. I don't know how Freddie Stewart was left out of this game, and that's nothing on Furbank being given a go, but I think Freddie Stewart should have been in the starting lineup. The other thing that I noticed as the game went on, and particularly as we got to the end of the game, by the time that England had emptied their bench and got all their players on the field, I felt as though those players that ended the game for England, particularly in the last 10 minutes, should have been starting the game for England. How do you leave a guy like Faye Wabasso on the bench for 65 minutes of the game? For me, that's like leaving the All Blacks leaving Will Jordan on the bench for 65 minutes of the game. You've got an attacking weapon there in England, and he needs to be on the field and he needs to be given the ball. And England could be a totally different attacking team with him there. He obviously showed it when he came on. He scored a really good try. He timed his run really well for that try, but also he made some other good runs, and he looked very dangerous. He looked like he was going to be able to beat the Scottish defence almost every time he had the ball. So missing Freddie Stewart and also having Wabasso coming on only for 15 minutes or so in this game, I think was a really, really big mistake on behalf of England. I would have also liked to see Finn Smith being given a go to start at number 10 in this game. I think we've seen enough of George Ford. We know what he brings to the game. He's got a very accurate boot. He can kick in general play fairly well most of the time. He got a drop goal, of course, in this particular game. But what we need to see in this England team, I think, if they're going to move into this dynamic of running an expansive rugby with the talented players that they do have, they need to have somebody in there at 10 that can drive them around the field, pretty much like what Finn Russell does for Scotland. So I think the selection choices for England were very poor by Steve Borthwick. I would have also liked to see Cunningham South getting a go starting in the game. I think this guy, I really rate this guy. I think he's a wonderful player. He just needs more time on the field, and what a way to do that by giving him 80 minutes. And I think that's what England should have done. So I've put on the bad side of the sheet or the ledger this game for England. Their selection choices, I think they were poor. I think Steve Borthwick had the wrong team on the field at the wrong time. If he'd started off with some of those players, I think the result of this game could have been different. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, the next thing on my list of bad things that happened in this game, again, it was England related. They were up 10-0 and they gave away that lead to lose this game. So when a team goes ahead, even if it's by 10 points, it's a start. They've got to keep the scoreboard ticking over, and England weren't able to do that in this game. So I think this was a really bad point from England's play. They enabled Scotland to get back into the game by making some silly errors, missing some key tackles, and of course some of that brilliance from Finn Russell and Duhan van der Merwe didn't help England's causes on this particular day. But I think we've got to set those things aside and look at some of the basic things that England are not doing well. And I think some of their choices around their kicking, particularly in general play, is very bad. We've seen a lot of this ping pong table tennis type play go on in some of these games, and England are just as guilty of doing that and giving away the ball on too many occasions, and we haven't seen them using their attacking opportunity. Next up on the bad list for me, another one for England. They're racking up a few here, but it's the number of turnovers. 22 turnovers lost in this game for England. They're just giving away the ball too much, and we saw drop passes, we saw them getting beaten in the breakdown situation, and we saw Scotland, particularly as I mentioned before, Rory Darge and Jack Dempsey going in there and doing a very good job, as was Richie as well for Scotland. And to lose 22 turnovers in the game for England, I think that's a poor statistic. They need to work on that, and that was a bad part of their play that had a direct impact, I think, on the outcome of this game in the weekend. Now, I can't pick on England all day, so time for one for Scotland. They conceded 10 penalties in this game. May not be a significantly high number, but I think it's something that Gregor Townsend needs to address with the team, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was something they talked about in the debrief this week. They've got to be a little bit more disciplined, particularly when they're playing teams like England, who have a great goal kicker in George Ford, and it can also give a lot of momentum away to the other team if they're conceding 10 penalties per game. Now, as I said when I was going through the list of good things, I said some of them have a double-edged sword, and now we're getting to them, and it's particularly around the territory and the way that England used the ball in this game. They had 102 carries in this game, England, compared to 86 for Scotland. So it just goes to show that they didn't use the ball in a significant way to be able to get points on the board, and we saw a lot of errors coming from England when they did get the ball, and they were trying to use it, particularly in their back line. The other statistic they won, 149 passes to 86 versus Scotland. So again, they had a lot of ball, they were moving the ball a lot, but we even saw them throwing the ball over the touchline on some occasions. So again, the execution, the skill execution for England wasn't there, and they weren't able to use that territory that they had, both by winning lineouts, winning scrums, winning territory, winning possession overall in this game. They weren't able to execute it through their backline. Now, the last one on my list is a Scottish one, and it's more of a gut feeling that I've got about Scotland's defence. We saw it when Wales started churning back at them in that game in Cardiff for about 25 minutes. The Scottish defence looked very, very poor indeed. They looked a lot better in this game against England, I thought, this weekend. However, when England did start putting some pressure on them, I was really concerned that they were going to get through the Scottish defence quite easily. So it's going to be really interesting in Scotland's last two games, particularly that big matchup against Ireland, on how the Scottish defence is going to go against that Irish attack that's going to keep coming at them for 80 minutes. So the thing in this game is that's their fragility around their defensive patterns. And I think when we see teams putting ultimate pressure on them, they've got some problems. We saw that against Wales for that short period of time. We saw it in their second match against France. And we saw it again in this match against England. They're going to have to tighten that up when they get to that game in March against Ireland, because Ireland are going to exploit that, that's for sure. So that concludes my list of bad things that I saw happen in this particular game. Again, drop me in the comments anything you saw that stuck out both for Scotland or England that you. Okay, moving on to the last list in my video for the review of this game between Scotland and England, played at Murrayfield in the weekend. And we're going to start off by just the terrible handling errors that were caused on the England side. Their lack of gelling between their number 10, 12 and 13 was very obvious in this game. They haven't played a lot of rugby together, we've got to give them that, compared to their Scottish counterparts, Finn Russell, Tupolotto and Hugh Jones, who have played a lot together. These guys haven't had a lot of time together, and it really showed in this particular game. So if England are able to clean that up a little bit, use the possession well that they've got, as I said, they've won the possession count, they won the territory count in this game, they won the lineouts and the scrums when they had the ball. They didn't use the ball effectively, and that's what it really comes down to in this particular game. So that's why I'd like to see Finn Smith in this game for England. I think he's someone that could be given a go to try and open up this England backline. Of course, we've got other players. Ollie Lawrence has just come back into this English team. He's got to be given an opportunity, I guess, to get going. But how many more opportunities are these guys going to be given? Because it just seems to be the same repeating button for these guys. And you know, Steve Borthwick talked in the press conference after the game about his disappointment in the lack of progression game after game from England at the moment. And he put a lot down to the combinations that were being tried. Well, the one thing is that players of this standard, of this level, need to be able to execute the ball. And it's just a simple thing, passing the ball to make sure it gets to the player, not passing the ball behind the player, not passing the ball into touch directly. And these are some of the fundamental mistakes that England are making at this stage. So I think it's got to go back to core basics, and these players who are being selected for this English team need to be able to have the skill sets to be able to execute. And that seems to me to be the biggest problem that's going on with this England team at the moment. They're getting plenty of ball, they're getting plenty of territory, but they're not using that ball well and making the right decisions. And I've said before that I think we've seen enough of George Ford to understand that he's fairly one-dimensional in that position. And I think Finn Smith should be given a go to grow into that 10 position to see whether he can bring something young and innovative and more dynamic to that English backline. And then the players outside of him can use the ball really, really well. You've got weapons like Elliot Daly out there that's not getting involved in the game enough, and Freddie Stewart not even being selected in the team. And this is where I think England are making some fundamental mistakes. So for me, the ugly side of this game was England's poor skill level, their non-stop mistake level across the field at different levels of time, and just the way they go about playing the game management, kicking at the wrong time, deciding to put an up and under there to give the ball away to the opposition when they could have run the ball at the opposition. These are fundamental mistakes that I think England are making. It comes down to coaches making sure they get their game plan across to their players, and the players understanding what their roles are. And that's what made it a fairly ugly game for me from an England perspective. So wrapping up this game for me, a 30 points to 21 win for Scotland at Murrayfield, the fourth in the row of the Six Nations competition over the last 4 years. First time that's been done. So hats off to the Scottish players and to Gregor Townsend and his coaching crew. I think they're doing a good job. I'm really interested to see how the Scottish team's going to go against Ireland. I think this could be a really, really good game, and I think Scotland might be up for it. However, if Ireland are able to close down Finn Russell and some of those weapons that Scotland have, then I can see it going pretty much the way we've seen the other Irish games going, because Ireland are going to score 30 points plus in this game against Scotland, and I just can't see Scotland scoring 30 points against this Irish team, in particular that defence. But hey, what do I know? I might be wrong, and probably will be. So leave me your comments about that as well. I'd really like to know what you think is going to happen when Scotland get to meet Ireland later on in the last game of this year's Six Nations competition. But there we go. I think Scotland were good for the win. I think Steve Borthwick needs to sit down and have a really good hard look at the selections that he's putting out in the team. What style of rugby do England really want to play? It's not just talking about wanting to run the expansive game all the time. You have to have players there that can execute it. You need a couple of weapons, and you need to make sure that they're getting the ball. So it's all very well bringing Wabasso on for a 15-minute cameo performance, but why couldn't the guy started the game and get a lot more ball to him and see what he can actually do? Bring players like Elliot Daly into the game. We want to see more of Ollie Lawrence, and Freddie Stewart needs to be back into this English team. That's what I think that's come out of this particular game. So there we go. That's my review of the Scotland versus England game from round 3 of this year's Six Nations. Love to hear your comments. Make sure you put those down below the video. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. We've got plenty more rugby to come in the Six Nations. I'm also going to be following some of the Super Rugby Pacific competition this year. What a fantastic game it was between the Chiefs and the Crusaders to kick off the tournament this year. I wonder if you saw that. If you did, let me know in the comments. It was a fantastic game of rugby. And plenty more coming your way as well. I'm going to be making a video shortly about Sir John Kirwan's efforts to try and clean up World Rugby. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail, and I'll give you my thoughts around some of the things that he's suggesting for World Rugby to move forward. Okay, that's it for this video. It's time for me to say adios from beautiful Mexico, and I'll see you all again soon in another video. Until then, stay safe, stay well everyone, and it's time to say bye for now.